Okay, great. You got 15 minutes with Zeno.
Oh, awesome. What's going on, Zeno? How you doing, man?
Good, brother. I'm good. How are you, man?
All right, doing all right, man. You are the street champion of voice acting, I'm sure, as you know. So it's really
I
great to be
appreciate
here and get to do this with you.
I saw your name on the list and I got very excited. I don't know if we've ever done like a face-to-face interview like this before, but
We have
uh
not.
yeah, when I saw your name, I was like, "Oh man, I'm very excited. I'm glad like I said yes to this much press of
Yeah,
him."
thank you. Like, I saw your name. I was like, I gotta
Yeah.
do. I don't even like doing interviews like that, but it's a Zeno. I gotta show up good, man. I gotta put on pants for this one.
Yeah,
All right, so
right. Same.
you
I
are
said, "Look, I got
the
people
lead
for
voice
today."
actor for Zom 100. Can you tell me what makes Zom 100 such a different take on the zombie genre, especially as an anime?
Yeah, Zom 100 is a different take on the anime genre because it it presents a story of hope as opposed to it in the wake of the apocalypse, as opposed to it being a story of the weight of what the zombie apocalypse means for humanity. I mean, it's the weight of what it means for humanity, but in a way that's not grim, in a way that's not
Mhm.
like defeatist almost. Like it's like the polar opposite of The Last of Us, right? The Last of Us is like
Yes.
zombies suck and everything sucks and this is depressing, right? And like Zom 100 takes the zombie apocalypse genre and is like, how can the end of the world actually be a great restart for somebody? How can the end of the world spur someone to do all the things that they wanted to do in their life? And how can you make it fun, and how can you make it worthwhile?
So watching the show, I'm like, I was surprised on how much it focused on like capitalism and a dude just like straight up hating his job, man.
Yeah. I was in another interview talking about how it's almost like a micro commentary on capitalism because like when the zombie apocalypse happens, it frees Akira not just from his job and the pressures of like what other people demand of him for his job, which he needs in order to survive, but it frees him from the pressures of the world as well. You know, like we live in a capitalist society, we have to work
Yep.
to earn our livings, and that's how we live. But in a apocalypse, you do not have to worry about any of that, right? So it frees him entirely to do literally everything he wants to do.
So I'm wondering, like, when doing that role, because like we see such a stark difference between him, like in his job, and then when he's out of his job, it's like, oh, I am the most free right here. I'm feeling like Monkey D.
Yeah,
Luffy, man. So
right.
when doing that, when voicing the part where he's in his job, and you're like, you sound so downtrodden and so sad, and I gotta know, are you pulling from a job that you hated and remembering it? Are you remembering that job you hated? If so, what was it, and like what field was it in?
Man, I haven't worked a lot of like 9 to 5s, but you
Mhm.
know, I did work retail, and it was very similar to the retail experience is very similar to kind of what Akira experienced. Like my first day on retail, I was like, this isn't so bad. I don't see why everybody's complaining. And then I was like week two, like I can't do this. You know, like I was like, I will do something crazy if I have to be here for longer than 1 year, right? And then also just like I pulled a lot from like my own like my own life. Sometimes I tend to overwork myself, and I tend to face like my own burnout to where I'm like, I don't want to go to work, I want to stay home and sleep, like I want to do this, or like I missed out on this experience or this opportunity because I decided to take on this thing over here, or this job over there, or whatever, what have you. So it was like a combination of like like how I felt on that job, and like sort of sometimes how it can feel living in a capitalistic society, and also
Mhm.
just like my own like personal burnout feelings that I go through sometimes, you know. So
Well, as the hardest working man in voice acting, I gotta know now because like you're like, yeah, man, I'm burned all these jobs. People keep offering me, man. I'm like, I guess I'm doing all this. So like,
I,
you've done so many voices now, and also I just heard you on as the Flash in Harley Quinn. I'm like,
Harley Quinn,
I
yeah,
know that
yeah.
voice. I know that voice.
Appreciate
So
you,
with
man.
so many characters, I'm sure there's like a special thing for each character that sticks with you and resonates with you. What is it about Akira Tendo for you that makes it special to voice him?
Yeah, it's I just feel like you know, Akira and I are very parallel. We're very I see a lot of myself in him, and I
Mhm.
also learn a lot from him. You know, like a lot of the ways he goes about certain situations is 100% the way I would go about it. You know, we have the hero episode coming up, and at the end Shizuka is like, why did you do that for someone you didn't know? Like, and you know, Akira goes, well, I would have saved you anyway. Like I would have attempted to save you regardless. Like you're precious to me now because we've shared this one experience, and like that's a lot sometimes how I feel about particular people in my life. Like man, I may not like see them all the time, or I may not interact with them, or we may not be as close as like either of us may like or whatever, however our relationships change, but if we've shared a one singular special experience, that person becomes really important to me. I love his optimism. I think like he looks at an apocalypse in the face and spins it to his benefit. He's able to see, like, if this guy is able to see the bright side in the end of the world, like what's stopping me from like seeing the bright side in a situation I'm going through, or what's stopping me from, he's able to chase his dreams in this way, and he has to adapt to the end of the world, right? Like a lot of the stuff he wants to do isn't really like necessarily achievable at the state of the world, but he's able to sort of flip it into a way that it's still as fulfilling and it benefits him. And I think there's a lot to learn from there too. So I just really, really appreciate like how like I feel like divinely parallel like Akira and I are, and we both approach situations the same. We both sort of have like this good natured heart, even among the face of like so much bad stuff going on. So yeah, I really, really admire that, and like I look up to that a lot.
So then, since you're so similar with them, how do you develop the voice for this character then? Like, what comes first, his character and the personality, or do you do the voice first and then add that in and change it along the way?
Yeah, it's mostly character and personality. When I like my audition for the role is a different voice than the voice that we're hearing in the show, right? So like when I first got the audition, I hadn't like really researched it a lot. I hadn't read the manga yet. I watched the trailer, and I like made his voice kind of based off what I was hearing in the trailer. And then when I like booked it, I went back and I like read the manga and I like watched the first episode because I think that was all that was available at the time. And after that, like even reading the manga, I was like coming up with the voice. I was like, oh, okay, I want him to sound like this because this is how his personality is formed in the manga. And so I got a feel for his personality. I was like, oh, I think he should sound like this. And so that's what I brought in when we recorded the trailer that everybody that Viz dropped for the English dub trailer.
So, I mean, now I got to ask you, as you put in your craft for voice acting, streets want to know what got you into voice acting and what keeps you there, Zeno. Tell us.
You want to know? I watched a play when I was a kid in middle school, and I think either way I would have ended up in some kind of artistic field. I was like my elective in middle school was art, so I was like drawing, and like I was like, oh, maybe I'll make a manga or something one day, or a comic book. But I watched this play. I saw all these kids run through the aisles. It was like the Lorax, and I looked, and I was a very energetic kid. I like jumping and running and jumping on stuff. So like all these kids ran up and jumped on the stage, and I went, how do I do that? Like how do I do that? And like one of my she ended up becoming my friend, but she did this big monologue and she was in this costume, and I was like, man, how do I do that? And so I walked up to the drama teacher and I asked him, how do I get in your drama class? And the school told me that I was already too deep in my elective, but the next semester I could change it. So then I changed it to drama, and that's when I started learning about acting. And then from there, my mom enrolled me in a program in Los Angeles called All About Kids with Felicia Scott. They had like an I Want an Agent program, which you did like 10 weeks of training. You like learn singing, dancing, and acting. And then I wrote, you could pick a monologue or you could write one. So I wrote this monologue. Like I was like 13 and I wrote this monologue and I had to memorize it, and we went over it, and we like I worked with one of the coaches there, and rest in peace, but he coached me through this monologue, and then I performed it in front of like 10 agents, and one of those agents picked me to represent me. Actually two of them, but the one I went with was Melissa over at CSD. And she sent me on my first voiceover audition, which was for this show called Ben 10 Hero Generation at the time, which ended up being Ben 10 Alien Force, which was my first ever voiceover role. So that was kind of how I like got into it, and I didn't work for a very long time after that. And so a lot of that was just like training. Like I was doing, classes with a teacher named Tony Gonzalez. I was doing classes with Charlie Adler. I took a class with Phil Lamar. I took a class with Greg Borders and Chris Zimmerman, and I was doing anime dubbing, and then there was the open auditions. The studio that does Psalm 100, Bangs and Studios, they do open auditions, or they would at Anime Expo. And so I went and I did the open auditions, and I didn't make it through. And then they had another thing that they did, and I didn't make it through that either. And I did the third, then they did the open auditions the next year. So I went there and I did that again. And then that's when I got my open audition callback. And then my first anime was like working incidentals on All No Zero. So that's like how I got started, and I love it. Even that journey, there's like that 7-year gap of me not working. There was a lot of times where I was like, maybe I'm just like not cut out for this, or maybe I'm just like, this isn't what I should be doing, or maybe like, I don't know, like I just don't got it, right? But I would like watch a movie and like I would get inspired. I'd be like, I can do that. Like this guy, whatever he's doing, whoever's in this movie, I can do that. Whoever's on this show, like I would like play a game or I'll watch a show, and there would be a performance that moved me, and it got my blood rushing, like the tingles, and I would be like, that would be the thing that kept me going, that kept me in it. It would be like that feeling of I can do that, I want to do that. Every time I thought like it wasn't for me. So that's like sort of what keeps me going, is like that feeling of like I can't. It's like, I can't leave rap alone. The game.
Yeah. I was waiting. I was like, my man's in the mirror, mom's spaghetti on his chest right now. I'm thinking that like, he's having his B-Rabbit moment. I'm like, rap is coming. I know it's
like it's like I can't. I just can't quit. Like even like on the times that I wanted to, I couldn't, and that's how I knew like I couldn't see myself doing really anything else. I felt like if I like ended up becoming a teacher, I would feel like I failed myself, so like it was also that like, just like, man, like I feel like I would have failed myself if I didn't keep going. So yeah,
I guess I'll hopefully have time for at least one more question. Like, so what is like the hardest thing about voice acting? And then for this role, what was the hardest thing that you had to come over for voice acting with that as well? Like a place where you find yourself stuck. You're like, man, how am I getting through this? And then like that moment where you broke through for it.
Yeah, the hardest thing I think about voice acting is like, because you audition for so many projects, like if you have a good rep and things like that, you will audition for things that are your dream project, and you will not get them, and not only will you not get them, you have to watch somebody else do it, and that is hard. Like I think that's the hardest thing. Like you attach yourself so deeply to a role or a project or an audition, and then you have to watch. Sometimes it's a stranger, like you have to watch a stranger sort of live your dream, but sometimes it's your peer, and you have to like be supportive of your peer who's doing the thing that you dreamed of doing. I think sometimes that is it's the hardest thing, and it's a great humbling experience where it's like always like, man, like you got to keep working hard. Do you really love how much you love it? How much do you love it? Where like you may not be, if your dream is to be Batman, you might not play Batman. You might play Lucius Fox, or you might play like, the Joker or the Riddler, but you might not ever get to be Batman. And you have to like be okay with that. Like that, I think is the hardest thing for me, when like certain people go into voice acting, like their dream character, I want to play this. And like that might not happen for you, but how can you make the other character you're playing, like say if my dream is to play Naruto, how can I make Akira as fulfilling as playing Naruto? And it's like about what I bring to Akira, and also Akira's story. And there's so many stories that can be told, and that's what I love about like Akira specifically, is like I love like out of all of these like other anime characters that I auditioned for, that I could have been, that I wanted to be, like I love that I'm Akira, and also somebody else may have wanted to, like their dream might have been to voice, like I think about Cyborg and Young Justice, that might have been somebody else's dream that like they had to watch me do, um And so I think what makes Akira, what was the second question? Like Akira,
like what was like a hard moment with Akira, like maybe a moment that was like hard for you with that role that you're like, oh, you broke through it. Like, oh wait, I can just do this. There we go.
Yeah. I think like sometimes I like it's Akira is one of my first few like anime leads, and he's like I think the most involved one I've played so far, where he has like the most lines and like he goes through the most like emotional like moments, and it's like I have to learn. It's like a big learning experience to make each line feel real and lived in over the course of a session, right? Like where it's like, man, I'm doing all this work, and I got to make sure like these big emotional moments are just as power or I have to make sure these smaller subtle moments are just as powerful and palpable and real and honest as these big emotional moments, you know. And that was like a big hard thing, like I think I had to learn. And sometimes like going like taking yourself there, you know, there's that confession scene in the first episode, and you know we did that a few times because I really wanted to take myself there. I really wanted to and like sometimes that stuff is hard to just immediately jump into, and that's my big challenge I think as an actor, is like being able to just like go there on the first go instead of having to like be like, okay, that first take was pretty good, but like let me like do it again and go dig a little deeper, you know. And so like yeah, like just and we did, like we dug deep and we got there, right? But it was like sometimes I wonder, like, I wonder if I could have gone further, you know, how much further I could have dug for that scene, you know, I wonder what that would have done. But yeah, like, I think that's the hardest challenge I faced, like, as Akira is like, not necessarily going there, but like trying to go there deeper than I think, you know, trying to dig into that moment deeper than, you know, challenging myself and like digging deeper than I think I need to dig in order to get a more richer, more nuanced performance.
Oh man, well, you've answered all my questions, man, and I get to now tell you this face to face. My first time hearing it was, of course, as the Green Pacho. So now it's really great to be here and see you.
Dude,
you know what I'm saying, and tell you and appreciate you face to face. And also, I look forward to hearing more of your work and seeing more of your work, man. You're the best. You're the best of us, Zeno. You're the man.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
I appreciate you, brother. As
Yo.
are you, dog. I can't wait for you to see some of this other stuff that I'm doing, man. Sometimes I get excited, like, man, Omar's gonna flip, you know. So.
I always will, man. So thank you so much, thank you for having the time to enjoy it for this.
Thank you, man. It's so good to talk to you face to face, brother. Hopefully, it won't be the last time, man.
Of course, man.
All right, brother. Till next time. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Later.
Much love.